Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk. There has been a problem in our borough of the Bronx for many, many years. A lot of people don't know about it, but the fact is we are underserved by so many things, as you know, but in particular by financial institutions. And in many cases, this has really caused a very big problem. You look at poverty in the Bronx. I mean, we all know what many people in the Bronx are going through. Immigration numbers are up, and that has exacerbated problems for many of those immigrants. We really need more coverage. There have been many efforts over the years, but we don't have enough banks, especially in the South Bronx. I want to give you just some of the numbers that I pulled out. If you look at banks per capita, meaning banks per person, in Brooklyn, just for example, more than 2.5 million people, they have 331 banks, one bank for every 7,785 people. But now in our home borough of the Bronx, we have fewer people, 1.4 million people. We have 120 banks, and that adds up to, or adds down to, one bank for 11,000 people. That means 35% less coverage of financial institutions for the people of the Bronx. And that is the subject of our show tonight. I am absolutely thrilled, having sat in this seat for more than 2 decades, that I think finally we have a group of people, a group of organizations, quality organizations together to finally address this problem and give the Bronx the kind of financial support that people need so that they can just do better for themselves. It is called the Bronx Financial Access Coalition, and I'm going to introduce 3 of the members of that coalition, and we're going to break down some of the history of how we got into this mess to begin with, and then how we're going to try and get ourselves out of it. So first of all, let me introduce Gregory Jost, who is the Policy and Campaigns Advisor for Banana Kelly Community Improvement Association. How much great work has Banana Kelly done over the years in the Bronx, right? Gregory, nice to have you with us.
Thanks, Gary. Good to be here.
Laura Guerrero is the Housing and Financial Advocate for the University Neighborhood Housing Program. Laura, nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having us today.
And we did take a look and see how many times she's been on Bronx Talk before, and it's not just once, but she's been here a few times. Kerry McLean, who's the Vice President of Community Development at WHEDco. Nice to have you with us, Kerry.
Good to be here, Gary.
Gregory, let's start with you. Let's do a little history. Of course, Banana Kelly, one of the most important historical development organizations in our borough. How did we get here? What happened to make it so that banks would say, I don't think we're going to put any branches in our borough of the Bronx?
Yeah, a lot of this you can track back to some of the different housing and banking policies in the 1930s, 40s, 50s that really devalued neighborhoods across the nation that where they were home to any people of color, specifically Black residents, Latino residents. They didn't call that. They mostly said Negro and Puerto Rican, and they were called infiltrators back in these maps from the 1930s from the Homeowners Loan Corporation.
So that's how far back this goes. 1930s. We're talking, that's 90 years.
And this was a time where neighborhoods in the South Bronx were thriving, very diverse places of the Bronx African American History Project has done great work on this to highlight the cultural creativity, the music, the Bronx Music Heritage Center, all this work that's come out in terms of the contributions that the Bronx has made to the jazz.
Let me just add, culturally, we were the center of the universe, as far as I'm concerned. And there's no question, from all over the world.
And from people who lived in the neighborhood, these were amazing places to be. But for outside valuators, they looked at our neighborhoods and said, you know what? You are not as wealthy and white and restrictive as we want our neighborhoods to be, for them to be appraised in a certain way and not seen as risky for a decline over the long term. So unfortunately, with this kind of way that structural racism was baked into the design of cities, places like the Bronx, especially in the South Bronx, but then moving over time, were devalued. That's why we were also slated for a lot of urban renewal projects. That's what we got a lot of. Demolition of housing and building of expressways, highways. And and the
Grand
like.
concourses, yes.
Well, yeah, especially the interstate highways, but also, and then the displacement that happens in other parts of the city, like when they built Lincoln Center, a lot of those folks ended up displaced into the Bronx. And over time, our neighborhoods were more and more, the term then becomes redlining. The maps, they were colored in red. And through this redlining process, the neighborhoods were written off. And so even though there were plenty of bank branches in the Bronx to begin with, over time we see closures. And I'm trying to find historical data. It's very hard to get my hands on. But I do want to share, as I'm able to find it, I would love to share more about it. But we know that by the time we get to the 1970s and the 80s, where we have fire and abandonment devastating much of the South Bronx and spreading north and west, that many banks are also packing up and leaving the Bronx. And in kind of that vacuum that's left behind, by the time we get to the 1980s, we see more and more what we call alternative financial services springing up in their place. And that's like the check cashers and the pawn shops that are quite ubiquitous in certain neighborhoods. So even with that data that you showed, Gary, on the number of bank branches, those are also concentrated in some of the, either in the wealthier neighborhoods or on the big commercial strips. And so when you go into certain neighborhoods, like near Banana Kelly's office, either on Prospect Ave or by Kelly Street along Westchester, you can find a stretch in the middle of that part of the Bronx between Southern Boulevard and over by the Hub, and north to south from 149th Street up to Tremont, where there are 0 bank branches.
I just want to, Gregory, that it's just amazing. Those of us who know the geography that you talked about, think of how many people live in those areas. And for people who live in neighborhoods where they can go to their corner bank or go a few blocks and just don't even think about it, think of what that would mean in terms of you want to go to the grocery store and you need some cash, or you need to borrow money. I mean, it's just the implications from 149th Street up to Tremont. Think of how large an area that's, you just said it, but I want people to focus on how crazy that is.
Yeah.
It's insane. Why is it such a hard sell right now? Because there are people here, listen, everybody's not, poor and broke. There's real business here available.
There is, however, to the banks, they see our neighborhoods as kind of not as profitable as wealthier places in the city. And so they want to put their branches in wealthier neighborhoods. Now we have the Community Reinvestment Act that residents in the Bronx and in places like the Bronx across the country fought for in the 1970s, that requires banks to have branches and provide services and do the right thing. But the law doesn't have enough teeth. And so we've also been pushing federal banking regulators to do a better job and pushing
and kind of insist on this. Gregory, I want to bring in some of your colleagues here, and I will add to what you said. Before the pandemic, the Bronx had the fewest bank branches and the most check cashers and pawn shops per household in the state. Some even speculate in the country. And then the pandemic hit, and whatever was here, we're going. And they all split as well, which just made the situation worse. Laura, let's just talk about you. So you work at UNHP. Who comes in front of you? Who do you look at? And when they say to you, whether it's about poverty or about housing or about other issues, who are those people, and what are the needs that a proper financial institution can help address?
So here at the Northwest Resource Center, we experience firsthand the necessity of financial education in our communities. We work closely with low-income families, immigrants, and seniors, where they come searching for help with their personal finances, money management, and we help them with housing and how to keep their housing. We understand that credit plays a major part in budgeting, in funding housing or keeping your house. So at UNHP, we also see the struggle from our clients from opening a bank account, savings, or checking, especially with the immigrant community, where it's hard for them to find a bank that can offer them affordable products, and that they understand the fact that they're immigrants and they might not have the right documents to open a bank account with those big banks.
Let me just interject about that. And I know that Kerry is going to talk more about that. Think about coming to this country and saying, okay, I want to do this right. I have a family. I want to do this right. And you say, I need to deposit some money. And when I start to earn money, I want it to go into a bank and then be able to withdraw the money and use it and maybe go on vacation or take out a loan or, any number of services that we use a bank for. And number one, there's a language issue. And number two, you're told, okay, now I live on 153rd Street and you're going to have to, drive up to Fordham Road or take a bus up to Fordham Road just to talk to somebody in a bank. Crazy. It's insane. I'm sorry. I just have to say it. It's crazy. So, Laura, what do you tell those people?
So at UNHP, because we understood how difficult it is for our clients, we created a banking tools where we put together all the local banks in the Bronx with the address, the information, the products that they offer, including the credit union as well. It is great to see that a coalition has put themselves together and understood how much is needed in our community to improve their financials and to lead them to a better future. We understand that the big banks, not only they don't offer affordable products, but they also don't help them with their credit or with a personal loan, and things can come up, especially with our community. And the credit union, it's helpful when it comes to those things.
So let me just talk about it. So there's the People's Mobile branch that recently opened, right? I mean, this is really a very big thing. We've had attempts before that I mentioned to you guys before, and I recall the Bethex Federal Credit Union that was out there. Kerry, does this work? This idea of the People's Mobile branch, and I mean, is this the right direction, or is this really a band-aid to get it till we can really have? I don't want to call anybody out, a Chase Bank, a Citibank, a Webster Bank, another bank on the corner in some of our neighborhoods.
This is the way to go, Gary. We need more, and we need more diverse options here in the Bronx. And so, WHEDco, UNHP, Nos Quedamos, Banana Kelly have come together with the Lower East Side People's Federal Credit Union to launch the Bronx People's Federal Credit Union, which is a division of the Lower East Side Credit Union, to bring financial access, financial services right into our communities. We have to start from somewhere. And the fact is that, as you've said, so many neighborhoods in the Bronx are suffering from not having bank branches that are accessible, that are convenient, and that are affordable. The fact is that, the check cashing places, yes, they are convenient, but they're not necessarily affordable. They're transaction costs that people have to pay each and every day. And I saw this in my own family. My parents went to check cashing places for 14 years, even after they became documented, because they were kind of taken aback by and wary of the big bank and the big branch. Because they're not accessible and they're not necessarily welcoming. And so the Bronx People's Federal Credit Union is this option that through this partnership that we're providing so that more and more community members can have access in their own language, in their own community, and starting off as a mobile branch, which will expand into a bricks and mortar location, at least one of them in this next year. And we know that more are needed across the Bronx. I just want to reference really quickly that in a survey that I conducted with my organization, Wedco, where I work, as well as a Northeast Bronx partner. Like, we typically work in the South Bronx, but because of this issue of financial access, we went to the North. And what we found was that in both the neighborhood surveys in Crotona Park, East Marisania, in that neighborhood, there were only 5 bank branches serving a population of 80,000.
Yeah, this is what I was saying, and this is some numbers right from that that study that you did. Population 91,000, 60% are rent burdened, 31% are foreign born, 31% are below the poverty line, and 16% are unemployed. Imagine those people not having access to proper financial institutions. I mean, this is the problem. Now let me ask you this, and I don't know if you or Gregory, or even Laura, has an answer to this. What's the sale here? It just seems to me so easy to say, look, you got all these people. They do have some money and they do have some needs, Mr. or Mrs. Bank. Why can't we get you there? So Kerry, we'll start with you, and then Gregory will let you weigh in. Why can't we get, like, what's the rap? What's the story here? What's the dialogue about? They say, no, well, they're poor or they're unemployed or whatever they say. I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. But what's the sale here? Why can't we just make it happen easily?
Yeah, I think, over the years, like, the banking industry has moved away from community banking, like really serving people, relationship banking, not just a transaction. And that has been allowed.
It's all done like this on the phone.
And everybody's just a number. It's not about serving the community anymore. It's about how can we put profit over people in this case. And so when we've talked to in the neighborhoods where we've worked, where bank branches have closed, and we've met with the presidents of banks that have closed, including Amalgamated, for example, around the Jerome Avenue neighborhood and close to where UNHP is, what we have heard, whether it be from the president or from other materials from regulators, is that they're like, we were making but so much profit at this particular branch, or we had this much in like holdings at this particular branch. And therefore, the pandemic also kind of like pushed.
It gave them an excuse.
Gave them license.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
I'm speaking very strongly about this because I'm an immigrant. I've seen it with my family, with my relatives, with community members that I work with community members that I serve that are my neighbors too. In that, we are not being well served by banks and by branches. Like, we are no less poor or no less able. And if anything, we're more striving and more capable and
harder working, of course.
And harder working. And still these banks are allowed to leave. That's what it comes down to, as Gregory was saying, with the regulations. They are allowed to abandon us, and that's not okay.
Gregory, what's your answer to that question? Or did she pretty much summarize it? I mean, what do you find when you meet with people and say, look, we got to get this done? And I have to tell you, based on when Kerry said, they said, well, we make more money elsewhere. I'm glad that I'm on TV, because I would not use pleasant language when I heard that. But go ahead, Gregory. I'm sorry.
Well, and it's not new. I mean, Lower East Side, people started because the last bank branch closed on the Lower East Side in the mid 80s. Now, since there's probably new ones because the gentrification and things happening, but once a bank branch closes, we know they don't come back either. You can go back to around the same time in the early 80s. There was a bank branch, a Citibank bank branch on West Kingsbridge Road near the VA hospital and University Ave, like up on that side. That one closed. It never has been replaced by another bank branch. So we know that it's really important to stop them before they close and work with them. And maybe Laura can share a little bit about our experience having a positive, sometimes we'll have a positive interaction with the bank, but those are few and far between. We had some success with Ridgewood Bank. With the credit union campaign, we had some success going a different route and talking to Webster Bank about their closure, and they've been sponsoring us as in our campaign to bring the credit union up to the Bronx. But it's a real struggle. The regulators claim they don't have the authority to do the things. So we've also been pushing. The regulators are rewriting their rules and such right now, but it's very disconnected from people.
It sounds like you also need to have elected official support to push government, whether it be, you talked about the Federal Reinvestment Act, giving it more teeth, or at least more making sure it has more authority. It seems to me that has to be part of it. So Laura, let's let you dream a little bit. So now you're talking to one of your clients or somebody who comes in there, and they have whatever issues they have. What is it that you would like to see in either your neighborhood or their neighborhood that would really help? And what are the services they would provide that you would say, oh, good, now I can really, aside from the tools we provide, I can really help this person because there's something they can do?
Great question. I would love to see more credit unions around the Bronx.
More what?
Credit unions around the Bronx.
Credit unions?
Yes, because I firsthand experienced situations where I needed a personal loan, and it's so hard to obtain that in a regular bank. With the credit union, they make you feel as a family member. They make you feel they understand your issues. They understand that you're making decisions, financially speaking, to become better, to be in a better position. And we don't have that around our communities. We don't have the banks that care for us as humans. They don't see you as that. They see you as a profit. So definitely.
So that's what you'd like to see, and a
Yeah.
brick and mortar credit union. I mean, listen, it's nice to have one that is coming by every Tuesday
Yes.
or whatever it is. That's without opening up the Axelbank family books, I can tell you that there is a credit union in my neighborhood, in my Bronx neighborhood, and I use it. And when my daughter needed a loan for something she was working on, we were able to do that. And in fact, what Laura said is true, because I know the people there. We've been part of it. Kerry, and I want to get into this with you because we want to really move to the next step. Are credit unions the answer? Are they part of the answer? Are they step one to the answer? Because Laura has defined it properly. What is your vision about what we need? And of course, I know you've worked hard with these immigrant populations, so maybe you can tie that together a little bit.
Yeah, I think, there's an ecosystem of financial services that is missing in the borough. And it's not fair when it comes down to it. We want to have the same and better options, actually, because a lot of people are, as we call it, unhappily banked. You may have a bank account at a major bank, maybe 2 or 3 of them, but you're not necessarily fully happy with what you're getting. So, we really see this as a part of the solution. The wonderful thing about the Bronx People's Federal Credit Union is that it's a community development credit union. So it is community owned. When I go into, or you go in, if you have an account there, and they provide free checking accounts, free savings account. And actually, the first thing you have to do is start a savings account. So they are really grounded in building wealth, which is what we're all, striving for, to be able to provide generationally for our families. So, it's really crucial that when we go into these places, that we're not just a number, that we are the owner. In this case, with the Bronx People's Federal Credit Union, you're not just a customer. You actually own, or part owner,
Yes.
the financial institution with your neighbors and with your friends. I don't know what's better than that, but to build our ability to own and to generate wealth and to build assets in the borough.
I'm thinking again of what Laura has presented about the people who come in there, and thinking of my own situation. We talk about addressing poverty, and it's like this big beast. But if you teach somebody or help somebody learn how to save money, how to budget money, and that all comes through the credit union and through the bank, et cetera, et cetera. Gregory, let's just let you dream a little bit. And how are we going to get there? In other words, what are the next steps? The Bronx Financial Access Coalition, as you know, I'm very excited with all the organizations, because these are among the top organizations, the fighters in the Bronx. Nos Cadamos is part of it as well. So what are the next steps? Who do you pick up the phone and call or email now that we're all working like this?
Exactly, right. And we're out on the streets, but we're also doing things virtually and connecting people. So we're grateful to be able to share about it here as well. And as Kerry was sharing, like, this is community owned. It comes out of a long tradition of community ownership projects in the Bronx. Like, a lot of our organizations, Banana Kelly, a lot of the housing groups in Northwest Bronx, we're community controlled, community owned housing. That's a lot of our roots, and our power, people power, come out of that. And this is a financial version of that, financial services version of that, in the same vein, in the same model. And some of, this work goes back for over 100 years in many ways with the credit union movement in this country, and especially for community development credit unions in neighborhoods like ours. So while you get to be part of this thing where you have access to the services, the education, like understanding like how this whole system works, we get, increase our knowledge. Knowledge is power. And we are also building power by doing it together and being the owners of it jointly.
I wholeheartedly agree, as opposed to having one voice. I'll tell you the other thing, which is heartening to me, and it came up slightly in the dialogue, is the fact that, yes, we talk about the South Bronx and it gets stylized, and I get that. But, we're talking to Laura, who is not in the South Bronx, and Gregory mentioned, Kingsbridge Road. I'm definitely on the page of saying, let's get everybody in the Bronx to understand that if some people do a little better, we will all do a little better. And then all the people who are complaining about homeless on the street or, all these other issues, you'll have to do a lot less complaining because people will be able to empower themselves.
And the bank branches are closing in all of our neighborhoods. So we're really taking a whole borough-wide approach to this. We don't want to exclude any neighborhoods. There, yes, like you've said, Gary, the South Bronx, it may be more concentrated, but we know from talking to folks in different parts of the Bronx, including in the Northeast Bronx as well. Like there's bank branch closures happening up there, Co-op City, like all the different neighborhoods. And we're partnering with other organizations. One of our another big partner for the credit union is the Drivers Co-op. And so you have a lot of livery car drivers who may have been with Lyft or Uber before and saw it wasn't really a great deal. And they've left and formed their own worker-owned cooperative of drivers.
Right,
and
Gregory,
they're refinancing high-cost car loans and getting these really affordable car loans. They're a big partner of registering their members for this as well. And they're all over the Bronx.
We got to move because we're going to run out of time. So Laura, again, for you, the next step, obviously you're just going to keep doing what you do. You see the next step is this continued dialogue that Kerry was talking about?
Yes. There's a lot more to do. And I'm glad that we're all coming together, different organizations to put
I think this is definitely the way to go. Kerry will give you the final word on this. What are we going to see soon, or what are you guys working on soon that's going to make us say, "Oh, good, they moved another step"? I mean, aside from the People's Mobile Bank that we've seen.
Yes, I am going to ask Gregory to say the phone number that people should call if they're interested in the Bronx People's Federal Credit Union. We can bring it to your location. This includes just wherever you live. We're asking elected officials, community members, community organizations to reach out to us. It's really important, the partnerships that we're able to build across communities, as well as just individual community members who may be unhappily banked, just calling and say, hey, I want to find out more about it.
I think what you just said is so important. We have business improvement districts. We have all those people, and all this is related to all that stuff. You want people to shop in your stores? Empower them financially. Gregory, you have the phone number?
Yes, you can go to, you can Google Bronx Financial Access Coalition, but you can also give us a call at the credit union. We have an extension for the Bronx.
Call it out.
Which is 212-529-8197. And the extension is 0130.
There you go. All right, listen, we do got to run. Gregory Jost from Banana Kelly, thank you so much. Laura Guerrero from UNHP, University Neighborhood Housing Program, thank you. Kerry, nice to see you again. Nice to have you on the program again from Wedco. Say hello to all my buddies over there. We say hello to Nos Cadamos, and we thank the Lower East Side People's Federal Credit Union for joining us. Next week, folks, we're going to have a very interesting show. We're going to do a little post-mortem on the primary, and we will have the three primary winning Senate Democratic candidates, Gustavo Rivera, Natalia Fernandez, and Robert Jackson will be joining us on the program. So we'll see you then. Good night.